the age of just 25, following the sudden death of her father, King George VI. During her lifelong reign, the Queen dealt with no fewer than 15 prime ministers. The first, Sir Winston Churchill, through Margaret Thatcher, of course, and Tony Blair, Boris Johnson, too. As head of the Commonwealth, she became the most travelled monarch in history, head of state of 15 countries at the end of her reign. The Queen's death comes just over a year after the passing of her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, a consort for more than 70 years. And over the decades, the Queen was greeted by millions of people and met her subjects on thousands of engagements in the UK and beyond. She was last pictured here at Balmoral on Tuesday, asking Liz Truss to become Prime Minister. Now, as the crowd passes to a new king, Charles III, the Queen's death will be deeply felt by her family, of course, by people across the United Kingdom and millions around the world. Good evening. The reign of the longest-serving monarch in the history of the United Kingdom has come to an end with the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Buckingham Palace made the statement just after 6:30 this evening. The Queen, who was 96, passed away at Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire. Members of the royal family had made the journey there on the news that she was gravely ill. The Queen had been a commanding presence in British public life for more than 8 decades, and held his son, Charles, at the age of 73, has now become King Charles III. Buckingham Palace had issued this statement today: the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Well, following the death of his mother, His Majesty King Charles III released this statement: "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and much loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held." And a sign of that deep affection on show this evening, this live pictures from Buckingham Palace, where thousands of people have gathered in the pouring rain to mark their respects and to mark the passing of Her Majesty. Flowers laid outside the gates, where a little after 6:30 the official announcement was posted on the railings that the Queen had died at Balmoral. Well, our royal correspondent Nicholas Witchell now has this account of the Queen's long life.
I shall present unto you Queen Elizabeth, your undoubted
Queen Elizabeth.
She was 27 when she took the coronation oath.
She was very young.
She was anointed, blessed, and consecrated. She took possession of a 1,200-year-old throne. She knew that it was a role from which only death could release her. And yet, when she was born, no one had thought that it would be her destiny. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born on the 21st of April, 1926. She was the first child of the then King's second son, the Duke of York. This was the young Princess Elizabeth at the age of 4, visiting a photographic studio in London. Her life then was comparatively carefree. It was the abdication in 1936 of her uncle, King Edward VIII, that unexpectedly placed Elizabeth in direct line to the throne. Her father became king. His coronation gave the then 11-year-old Elizabeth a foretaste of what lay in store for her. The family unit was strong. Her father, George VI, was devoted to her, and she to him. Throughout her life, he was to be her inspiration. During the Second World War, as German bombs fell on Britain, the royal family symbolised the country's fight against tyranny. Elizabeth briefly joined up. She was taught how to drive and to service an army lorry. On the night Britain celebrated victory in Europe, the crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, and Elizabeth joined her family on the palace balcony. By now she was a young woman, and she'd fallen in love. Her engagement to Lieutenant Philip Mountbatten was announced in July 1947.
1947.
4 months later, they were married in Westminster Abbey.
Charles was born.
Again and again the people called for Elizabeth and Philip. Again and again they joyfully responded.
And we are married.
A year later, their first child, Charles, was born. 2 years after that, a daughter, Anne. The king had been in poor health. He'd been treated for lung cancer. When Elizabeth left for a visit to East Africa in February 1952, it was to be the last time she would see him.
The flag is low as the news spreads. The king is dead.
At the moment of her father's death from a heart attack, Elizabeth was in a game park in Kenya. The news that she was now queen was given to her by her husband.
Her tour of the Commonwealth cancelled. The princess we knew as a girl and watched in the even growth of her stature comes back to meet her ministers as queen.
In a way, I didn't have an apprenticeship. My father died much too young, and so it was all a very sudden kind of